Hello and welcome to another deck tech. Before going over the deck list, I wanted to quickly discuss the current standard metagame. I think the most popular decks at the moment are Mono Black, Mono Blue and Blue White Control. Then you also have decks like Red Devotion and Green Devotion, but those are far less popular than the first three decks I mentioned. So the deck I'm gonna be discussing today is sort of geared to try and beat those popular decks. It's not always easy as they do attack you from different axes, so I'm gonna try and do my best to explain all the card choices. So enjoy this Boros Midrange deck. Alright, let's start with the creatures. First off, we have 4 Chandra's Phoenix. These are good in a number of ways, because their evasion allows them to easily attack planeswalkers, and there's a ton of them in the current metagame. Then they're also a recursive threat, so against Mono Black for instance, if they kill it, you can burn their face and get them back and gain some sort of card advantage that way. Against Mono Blue, they can block those small pesky flyers. And finally, against Blue White Control, it's nice to have a creature with haste, as that sort of dodges Supreme Verdict. And again, if they verdict it away, then you can still get it back with your burn spells. It's a little annoying that Last Breath out of Blue-White Control can exile it, but we have to live with that. Next up is Boros Reckoner. This is just a good defensive creature that can also just switch gears and start attacking. It's a nice devotion enabler. We're not really a devotion deck, but we are running one Perforos, which I'll go over later. So it's nice to have that triple devotion. It's easy to cast with our current mana base, and it's just a fine creature to have. I'm also running 2 Tajiks, as they can survive Supreme Verdict, and against Mono Black Devotion they survive most removal spells except for the Edicts, and against Mono Blue Devotion they can block those Frostburn weirds for days. So it seems like a good creature at the moment. It does again die to Last Breath, which is a little annoying, and otherwise it requires like a detention sphere from Blue-White Control, so not a bad card. Next up we have 3 Stormbreath Dragons, a very good card against Blue-White Control. The haste is nice, and the only way for them to answer it once it resolves is with a Supreme Verdict, as a Azorius Charm and Detention Sphere cannot hit it. So a good card, and we can get up to 7 mana, so activating Monstrosity is not a problem. We've got some additional threats in Perforos, and as mentioned earlier, Boros Reckoner does a nice job of enabling it. And we also have a small token theme going on, so the ability to deal 2 damage and give +1/+0 is actually pretty relevant. And yeah, just a nice card to have. Again, from Blue-White Control, the only way to deal with it is a Detention Sphere. We also have 2 Chandra Pyromaster, also 2 Devotion for Perforos, and it's our main way of gaining card advantage. It's very nice against any aggressive deck like White Weenie, as it can usually kill a creature by +1ing it. And if we ever do get up to 7 loyalty, the ultimate can be quite devastating. Assemble the Legion is arguably one of the best cards in the deck. I think it's very well positioned at the moment, because Blue-White Control can only answer it with a Detention Sphere once it's on the table. Mono Black Devotion doesn't have an answer for it other than using Thoughtseize before you can play it out. And once it's on the table you can keep sacrificing the tokens to Desecration Demon, so even that card is not a problem. And against Mono Blue Devotion, sure, you cannot block Master of Waves with the tokens, but you can block the tokens from Master of Waves. And yeah, their only real answer is probably Cyclonic Rift to try and reset it, but they won't get rid of it permanently. Now let's take a look at our removal spells. We are running 4 Lightning Strike, very good card against a Nightveil Spectre that both Mono Blue and Mono Black Devotion are running. And even against Blue-White Control you can always point this at one of their Planeswalkers to try and kill it in combination with maybe a Chandra's Phoenix, so that's another well-positioned card. We are running 2 Mizzium Mortars for the Blood Baron of Vizkopa you might encounter. It's also great against Stormbreath Dragon, as some of our white removal spells can't target it. and you can also quite often overload it, so against Mono Blue Devotion it's great, as it also kills Frostburn Weird, and even against Mono Black Devotion, if they go all in on Pack Rat, you can get them with this. Our main sweeper is Anger of the Gods. We got 3 of them in the main deck, 1 in the sideboard. Kills Nightveil Spectre out of Mono Blue and Mono Black. Kills a lot of the 1 and 2 drops out of Mono Blue Devotion. Also kills the tokens from Master of Waves. And it can also deal with an early Pack Rat out of Mono Black Devotion. It could also kill the tokens from Elspeth out of Blue-White Control, but I would probably side it out for game 2. Warleader's Helix is another nice burn spell, as it can gain you some precious life against the aggressive decks, and it's also pretty good against Planeswalkers. If your opponent plays, for instance, a Jace and +1s it on turn 4 after you've played a Phoenix on turn 3, then you can simply attack with the Phoenix, deal the Jace 1 damage and then finish it off with a Warleader's Helix. Chain to the Rocks is another great removal spell, as it can deal with a Desecration Demon all day, and it's also our best answer to a Master of Waves. So great card, very cheap, and we've got more than enough mountains to make it work. The mana base in this deck is great. We can run 8 Scrylands, which is basically like drawing half a card whenever you play it. And we're not a super aggressive deck, so the fact that they come into play tapped is not an issue. And it's also good against cards like Azorius Charm. If they bounce a creature that doesn't have haste and you don't want to draw it again the next turn, you can simply scry it to the bottom with one of the temples. We can also play 4 Mutavaults, which is another great card against Blue-White Control. So even if they verdict you, you can still keep attacking with the Mutavaults. And it can also help enable the Battalion on Tajik. Now let's jump over to the sideboard, where we have 4 Firedring Crusader, which is a great card against Blue-White Control, as it can apply some early pressure where your main deck is lacking that. And it's also a fairly decent card against Mono Black Devotion if they don't side in Pharika's Cure, because the Mono Black Devotion deck is actually pretty weak to early aggression, so it's nice to have an early threat. Then we have 1 additional Chandra Pyromaster, which is another great card against Blue-White Control, as it requires another Detention Sphere to be answered once it's on the table. Wear and Tear is a great card at the moment. Let's go over some of the cards it can deal with. Out of Blue-White Control, it deals with Detention Sphere that the opponent is relying so heavily upon. It also kills Elixir of Immortality. It can deal with maybe Ratchet Bomb or Pithing Needle out of the sideboard. Against Mono Black Devotion, it mostly kills Underworld Connections, but it could also deal with a Whip of Erebos out of the sideboard. And against Mono Blue Devotion, it kills Bident of Thassa, but it could also deal with a Domestication out of the sideboard. So that's a lot of targets and a lot of versatility. Then we also have Toil and Trouble, mostly for the Trouble side, but we can cast the Toil side with the 4 Temples of Silence in the main deck. But Trouble is great against Blue-White Control, as it can usually burn them for 5 or 6 damage, which is great. And yeah, even in the late game, if we can cast the Toil side, it can draw some cards or just finish off the opponent. Then for the aggro matchups, we have 1 Electrickery, which is great against White Weenie. We have 1 additional Mizzium Mortars for Stormbreath Dragons or Blood Barons, or even if we need an additional sweeper. And a 4th Anger of the Gods rounds out the sideboard. The deck is still very much a work in progress, so feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. But for now, I want to thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and happy holidays to everyone.